Hey guys, welcome back to the shed. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make some quick beginner projects out of stuff like this rebar. Just for some inspiration for any of you guys who are trying to get into blacksmithing or just need something to make. So I'm not one for long intros, so let's get into it. So these are the first two projects I'm going to be showing you guys how to forge. This is just your regular drift made out of rebar, and this is just your average chisel made out of rebar. And I will say I'm starting with these two because if you are trying to get into blacksmithing, or if you're going to do any of the projects after this, you're probably going to need at least one or two of these. This is just because the drift especially is such a versatile material. It allows you to make punches and holes in metal, and the chisel is just good for making scribe lines, making just whatever lines or cuts you need to make. As for materials, you're going to need, like I said, rebar works fine. If you have some construction sites near you, you might be able to ask the workers if you can take some of their scrap. Or, worst case scenario, you can either go online and buy tool steel. It's really not that expensive. Or even just go to Home Depot and buy yourself some rebar, because this stuff is kind of dirt cheap. But it is hardenable, and it is a great practice material to do a lot of these projects with. And I'm going to assume that you guys have a forge if you're planning on doing any of these projects. It's a bit of a thing. And a hammer as well. It doesn't have to be a cross beam, just a sledge, something. Just a piece of metal on a stick that you can hit other metal with. If you guys don't have a forge, there's always the coffee can route. That is definitely probably the best beginner blacksmith forge, I would say. But this is also a nice upgrade design. I have a video on it. I'll link to it up there. But that one's pretty popular, so you guys might have already seen it. Alright, so the first one that we're going to start off with is the drift. The way you're going to do this mostly to start is just by rolling it around, give it a slight angle, and hit to taper it out. And this is probably about a good size to get your drift down to. Maybe I'll go another heat on it. You mostly just want to get it down to where it's more grindable, whether it be with an angle grinder, belt sander, whatever you're using. And for the chisel, you're just going to take another piece of rebar and you're going to flatten. That's where I'm going to end it, at least flattening wise for this chisel, because for me personally this is going to be a mid chisel. But if you need a thin cutting chisel or something to mark real thin lines with, I would suggest going thinner. If you're looking for something just to make some deep cuts in, to make big gouges out of, keep it thicker, get a steeper edge on there. And now for a little fun, since these are tools, they need to be hardened. And number dos. Alright, now that we got both of these hardened, it's common practice to temper these tools. What does that mean? That normally means either throwing it in your oven while your oven's at, say, 400 to 450 degrees, keeping these in there for at least an hour or two. Or you could even furnace cool, since you just got done forging. That's a good way to get a little bit of a nice temper. Anything really to keep your metal at a high heat for an extended period of time to draw back some of that brittleness that we get from the quench. Bam, just like that. All tempered up. Now I'm going to show you guys two ways where you can sharpen these tools and make them usable in your shop. Now I normally only use my angle grinder for cutting metal, but when needed, you can attach a grinding wheel to get the job done. This is what I used when I was first learning blacksmithing. These are good for stock removal even, but I just don't normally use it when I'm grinding tools and stuff. But I'm gonna grind the drift with this just as an example so you guys can see how you might be able to use an angle grinder, which is a much cheaper option than a belt sander, to get your tools sharpened up. So just like with hammering this thing out, you're gonna want to be working it and just spinning it around so then you can keep that geometry circular and easy to punch through metal. Now if you're like me, there's a pretty good chance that you got some fish mouthing. I'm just gonna have to grind it down all the way, or even if you want to, you can switch over to a cutting wheel, cut that off to where it's still solid metal, no fish mouthing, and then you can just grind it down from there. And this is the finish that you get off of the angle grinder. It's a bit rough, it's not the most even, most geometric shape that you would want, but it gets the job done. If you were choosing to go the angle grinder route of things, I would suggest getting some flap discs to do some finishing work. Moves material a little bit slower and makes it easier to get a nice geometry when it comes to grinding in stuff like this. Now for the chisel, I'm going to be using my good old friend the belt sander because it is a lot faster, and with something like this where you want a straight edge, it makes it so much easier to get those bevels in and just have a flat cutting edge. I understand though that not everybody has a belt sander. This thing is pretty cheap though, it's only 60 bucks. I did a review on that, I'll put it up there. But another option would be to put a grinding wheel on a bench grinder if that is what you happen to have in your shop, and then you can grind it like this, I don't know. I'm not very experienced when it comes to bench grinder grinding, but I do know it can be done, and it's not a bad way to get your start into a small bit of tool making for blacksmithing like this. And now you just need to cut these off for the appropriate handle sizes. Keep in mind that they will be a hand tool, so you want enough space for you to hold it with a glove, obviously, away from the workpiece without burning yourself. I personally like to cut my chisels to about 8 or 10 inches overall in length, but it really just depends on your hand size and what you prefer. Okay, so I got these two cut down to size with the handles. So quick tip, putting some beveling on the edges of these handles with your belt sander if you have one can help prevent chipping, which is never a good situation. So if you are following along with these tools, you definitely want to do that. So now we are going to use this drift and this chisel, maybe even for some decoration. We're going to be making a good old bottle opener. I'll be using a railroad spike, but honestly, any material, heck, even if you want to use the rebar you used earlier for the tools, you can use, and I'll walk you guys through it as I go. So in the way of tongs for this project, you are going to need a pair. I'm going to be using these tongs that I have made out of rebar, and that's a bit of a more advanced project. Maybe I'll make a video on that soon. If you are limited on your resources, good old vice grips always work well, and just basically anything. If you have some pipe wrenches or something like that, you can always use those to hold onto the metal. Anything that can keep your metal in your hand safely. Okay, to start this project off, we need a flat surface to drift through. So get your project, your workpiece, into that state. Now you're just going to take your handy drift and start making a mark on where your hole is going to go. Be sure to leave plenty of room around the edges for the hole to expand into. Now we need to add a little lip so then our bottle opener can open bottles. So you can do that with your drift. Just make sure to angle it and then you will get a nice little lip. I'm gonna finish it up, add a touch mark probably, and heck, I'll even use the chisel to add a few little decorations. And there it is. Obviously this thing could use some touch up. I'll probably put a wire wheel finish on it personally, but you can do whatever finish is available to you. Experiment, have some fun. Just to recap a little bit, this project is especially good for drifting skills, which is, if you're looking for blacksmithing especially, that is a very good skill to develop. So I would recommend this project, and it just gets you that skill on with the anvil and the hammer. And yeah, that's what this project's really good for. Now, the fourth and final project we'll be going over today is making a wall hook. This project is honestly probably one of the better ones I have for you guys today. when it comes to beginner blacksmithing, just because they're so simple and they develop so much skill, and they're something you can make a lot of. It's a very production oriented project. The material you'll be needing, I like to use 1/4 inch rebar, so really thin stuff. You don't need a lot for these things, and that's another reason why they're so nice for beginner blacksmithing. You're not going to be using a lot of material. So this is a very easy project, should only take a few heats. We're going to start off, like with most projects, by flattening. And after you get this all flattened out, it's a good idea to start tapering this end. And then I like to add a null onto the end of my hook. It helps prevent clothing from getting caught on it. And now to finish it up by curling the end. I find this is best done at the horn and the edge of the end though. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, and you can adjust where you put the curve and stuff depending on the size of hook you are making it and what you're making it for. So now I just need to detach this from the parent material and drill the hole, which is what I will do. You can drift the hole, and I would recommend doing that if you are looking for a drifting experience, just like with the bottle cap opener. But I'm not, and I'm just looking to get this done so then I can get you guys on your way. And there we go, all cut off, blackened up, and whatnot. And with that, that is the end of this video, guys. Thanks for coming along, for making these with me. Let me know if there's any questions in the comments, seeing as this is a beginner's blacksmithing somewhat tutorial video. I wouldn't be surprised to see a few there. As always, be sure to like and subscribe. It helps us out a ton. We are actually about to hit 200 subscribers last I checked, which is amazing. Thank you guys so much. Getting all the support means so much to us over here at TT Blacksmithing, and we just love to make these videos for you guys. With that, see you guys in the next one.